Hello and welcome to this edition of Your Questions Answered with Father Gruner. I'm John Veneri. In this program, we take the questions that you send us and Father Gruner answers them, and we talk about them and have discussions. And continue to send them to us, please. Questions@thefatimacenter.com. Here's a question about Malachi Martin's book, Keys of This Blood, which was written sometime around 1989. It was the first book he published after he wrote The Jesuits. Did Malachi Martin ever indicate, now I will explain all this to you, so just stick with us. Did Malachi Martin ever indicate whether the consistory depicted at the end of Keys of This Blood ever took place? The scene is where the Pope calls together the bishops and cardinals, calls together the cardinals and effectively shuts down the curia, erects a new bureaucracy, makes the Tridentine Rite the normative mass, and greatly limits the use of the Novus Ordo. She's asking, did this ever happen?
Well, I think, John, you were talking before the program here. In fact, you yourself spoke to Malachi Martin about this very chapter, did you not?
Yes, Keys of This Blood is about a 700-page book, maybe six to 700. It's a big book. And I read it when it came out, and the entire book is about the state of the church, the state of the world, all under John Paul II. Brought in a lot of things of transnational corporations and banking, and I mean he really saw the whole picture. It's quite a book to read. One of the main men of the Council of Foreign Relations, now I can't remember his name. It'll come to me later on. John something. But anyway, all that type of thing is in it, and how communism has changed its face, and so the entire book was factual. And it had to do with John Paul II. And also the Judas complex was an appendix in that book.
You published that in CFN.
Yeah, I published it. And but then the very final chapter, I forget what it was called, but all of a sudden you're thrown into this action going on of this old cardinal saying, I got to get to this. I've been waiting for this. I got to get to it. That's how he starts it. So he pulls you in, with this. And what has happened is some pope, doesn't say it was John Paul II, but some pope calls a consistory of the cardinals together, and he basically lays out what a traditional Catholic would say, that we have taken the wrong course. Well, he talks about the state of the church, very dramatic, talks about the ruinous state of the church, and then at one point, this figure in white, this pope, drops to his knees in front of all the cardinals and says, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. And the consistory of cardinals are stunned. They're speechless. And then he stands up and says, now here's what we're going to do about it. And to make a long story short, he basically takes things back to the pre-Vatican II structures of theology and I don't remember about the restructuring of the bureaucracy. Maybe that was there. I don't remember it. And also going back to the Tridentine Mass, worldwide, and phasing out this Novus Ordo. So I knew Malachi, and I was really impressed by that chapter. And I said to him, is this what Malachi Martin would do if he became Pope? What was going on with this chapter? Yeah. And he said, no, that's not what it is. It's what a group of us, he didn't say who they were, a group of us wrote to John Paul II and suggested that he do. Of course, it never happened, to answer the one question there.
Well, it's interesting.
It never did take place.
But it's interesting, when you're telling the story about the Pope saying, there's this incident in Pope John Paul's life in public in which he cried streams of tears and about how terrible things, and he was saying, the whole thing was, at least as I got it, I didn't see it, I read about it, is that he felt guilty for the state of the church, and it was his fault.
Well, that's it. As I said, according to Malachi, he and a couple others wrote, now he had channels directly to the Pope because of his connections to the Vatican, and he said that we said, respectively, this is really what you should do. Now, this book came out about 89, so this would have been about, who knows, sometime in the 80s that they would have suggested this to the Pope. So I think the book is still in print. I'm not sure about that, but anyway, but to answer the question, it never really happened. It's something we would love to see happen, of course.
It seems, again, with your description of it, I've read parts of the book, but I haven't read that chapter. What it seems to me also, it talks about several things from the Secret. The Secret definitely talks about the Tridentine Mass as being the normative Mass, and that the new Mass shouldn't be done. The secret also talks about the Second Vatican Council, and that it's an evil council. It's got errors in it. It should not be. It should not. And those two things, and maybe he and a group of them have said this, but he's also, I think, relying upon his knowledge of the secret.
Well, Malachi had read the secret, yes.
Yeah, he's relying upon his, and those are the 2 points, the council and the Mass. He didn't mention the council at all, but he's reversing things, as you put it, to the things before the council, that not so much reversing things as restoring things to where they were before the council. And those are 2 things that it seems very interesting to me. But to answer the question of the person, no, it has so far not taken place. Let's pray for such a pope to do this soon.
It was an interesting literary device, really. I've never seen that done before, that you have an entire book that is factual, and at the very end, and of course Malachi was a terrific writer, so it was quite an adventure, reading the whole thing. So anyway, that's the question. That's the answer to that. And any more questions on that, please send them our way. And we'll see you on the next broadcast. Thanks for joining us.